So last month, I took a vacation to Japan, a trip that I've been wanting to do ever since I was a teenager, and I gotta say, Japan really lived up to the hype. Naturally, I had to check out some of the tech and PC hardware spots while I was there, and let's just say things didn't really go as I had expected. So in this video, what I'll be doing is I'm gonna be sharing my experience I had in Japan, from exploring the local culture, the iconic landmarks, and walking around in Akihabara. So let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about. Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. For this video, I wanted to do something a little bit different from my usual content and make a video that is going to be a bit more personal to me and just talk about my trip last month to Japan. I just thought, hey, it would be a nice break from the usual PC hardware heavy focused content and make something that is, a little bit more relaxed and reflective, something that I could enjoy putting together, and hopefully you'll enjoy watching too. Since I know almost all of you mainly watch my content because you're interested in the PC hardware and gaming space, I thought I would get that portion out of the way first, because while I was there and I did have the chance to check out the PC hardware market, that portion of my vacation was rather short-lived. One of the reasons for that was because we were just on a really tight schedule and had a whole bunch of other activities planned for our itinerary, and PC hardware wasn't really the main reason why I went there in the first place. But the second reason I didn't spend too much time there looking at PC parts or hardware is because prices in Japan are actually quite bad at this time, at least from the places that I had visited. I'll be honest, I didn't have much prior knowledge about the Japanese market to begin with, and seeing as I'm located in Canada, in the Greater Toronto area, so almost all of the discussions we have on this channel was done so using US and Canadian pricing in mind, and seeing how geographically close Japan is to a place like China, Taiwan, and Korea, I was actually under the wrong presumption that prices there would be slightly better. But given their economic conditions at this time and the fact that the yen has fallen quite a lot relative to the US dollar over these past few years, this is why consumer electronic prices in Japan in general are just so bad to begin with. Now, what made it easier for us in order to keep track of our spending and pricing and conversion is that one Canadian dollar is equivalent to a little over 100 Japanese yen. So for simplicity's sake, and what we were doing was any price tag that we saw, we were basically removing the last two digits off of that tag, and that essentially gave us our Canadian pricing. So if there was an item priced at 800 yen, that basically meant that it was about 8 Canadian dollars roughly. Or if there was something selling for, 15,000 yen, that basically meant it was 150 Canadian dollars. So that made transactions quite easy without even having to consult a currency calculator. To put into perspective how drastically different and bad the prices were in Japan, while in Akihabara, I did actually manage to check out some spots, and I can share some footage along with the pictures that I took. I don't have footage for every single spot that I went to because some places had no photography or videography signs there, so I just wanted to respect their rules. But one of the first places that I checked out was Yodabashi Camera, which I guess is kind of like their Best Buy, because they focus on a wide range of consumer electronics from cameras, smartphones, TVs, not just PC hardware and components. But when I stepped into that store, what I liked was how well organized all the sections were, and each floor was actually dedicated towards a certain category of electronics. I also liked how they kept as many things on display there, so if you want to physically check something out, even if it was like something minor as a phone case, you could easily do so. I also really liked how they had information plastered everywhere for each item, but some of the signs and marketing material could, I guess, get a little overwhelming. It wasn't too bad at Yodabashi Camera, but at a store like Megadon Q, it was as if every item was screaming at you to buy it. But I digress. Circling back to the pricing, at Yodabashi Camera, they were selling 5070s for around 1,600 Canadian dollars, which at the time of making this video is around 1,150 US dollars, which It's absolutely insane considering you can find brand new 5070s on Newegg.com for around $600 US. I also saw that they were selling some 40 series cards and they had them in stock, but the prices were just horrendous. They were selling 4060s for around 600 Canadian dollars. At the same spot, I had also checked out the selection of their Radeon GPUs, and the prices were not great for them either, because I saw that they were selling the 9070 XT Pulse for about 1,500 Canadian dollars, which is supposed to be an MSRP model. Here in Canada, it is also not selling for MSRP. It's marked up by $150 to around 1,000 Canadian dollars, which again is also not great, but not nearly as bad as what they have going on over there in Japan. I saw motherboards there as well, and the prices for them wasn't as bad as it was for GPUs. They were fairly close to the Canadian prices after conversion. Like, you can see that they have this MSI B850 Plus for about 340 Canadian dollars, which here from a place like Newegg, it retails for about $319, so it is a little bit of a markup. I saw CPUs and immediately said nope. Over there, if you want to get a 9800X3D, so basically the best out-of-the-box gaming CPU, you gotta fork over 100k yen, which is over 1,000 Canadian dollars. And Canada Computers is selling that for about 690 Canadian dollars. It's just absolutely crazy, but high pricing didn't really just apply to PC parts there. I also noticed in general, consumer electronics are more expensive than what I would see here in Canada at a place like Best Buy or Canada Computers or Newegg.ca or Amazon.ca. So another store that I checked out in Akihabara was Tsukumo, and this is a store that is actually totally dedicated towards PC hardware. They had about 6 floors there, and each floor was dedicated towards a certain category of components. Like on the first floor, they had CPUs, RAM, and cases. Then on one floor, they had peripherals. Then on one floor, they had GPUs and power supplies. So I did kind of like that format, but unfortunately, the prices here weren't that much better. You can see how they're selling RTX 4070 Supers for around $1,000 Canadian, and 4060s were going for a little over $500 Canadian. And they also had 7900 XTXs in stock here as well, which were retailing for about $1,300 to $1,700 Canadian, if not even more if you include the taxes. So at this point, I was honestly pretty turned off by the PC hardware scene, and that's why that part of my vacation was pretty short-lived. And, for my fellow PC gamers out there in Japan, honestly, my heart goes out to you guys because it is rough. You guys really have it rough there. And honestly, it's a pretty eye-opening experience. When you're in a market like North America and have been dealing with pricing here, you just don't really truly realize how bad it can get in other parts of the world until you actually travel there and look at the pricing firsthand and see what it's really like. I'm hoping that things over there in Japan when it comes to the PC hardware space can improve. On the bright side though, that did at least give me some more time to explore other types of shops and do other activities. So I guess at this stage, we'll pivot and talk about how the rest of my trip went. So for those of you who may not be interested in that part, that's totally understandable, and I'll catch you guys in that next video. But hey, for those that just want to chill and, hear about my experience and how the vacation went, then yeah, stick around and keep watching. So I guess I'll start off with how the flight went, which I would say is probably one of the worst parts of the trip, only because of how long it was. We had a layover in Montreal, and that was coming from Toronto, but it was only about an hour. So after that, we actually had our flight to Narita Airport, and that was about 12 hours. So sitting for that long in such a cramped space was quite hard, and I wasn't even able to sleep for an extended period of time. Although I did actually take my laptop with me, and I got to play a little bit of KCD1. I'm replaying that, so then that way when I move on to KCD2 finally, everything's still fresh in my head for the story. But anyways, once we landed into Narita Airport, I was bracing myself for another long wait, but honestly, I was pleasantly surprised because even though the immigration line looked long, they actually kept it moving pretty smoothly. Like, we were not really standing in one spot for like more than 5 minutes, I want to say. And what also impressed me was the baggage area. Instead of waiting for our bags to come on the carousel, all of our luggage was actually neatly organized in front of it, and it was ready to grab. It was such a clean and, organized experience, and really set the tone for what's to come for this trip. For our stay, we ended up at the Sheraton Grand Hotel in Uriyasu. It's nearby where Tokyo Disneyland is, and honestly, it was a great place to unwind. The hotel was super relaxing and has like a resort-like vibe to it, especially after that long flight, and it was nice to come back to after a long day's out. But if I was to do it again, I'd probably pick a spot that's more closer to central Tokyo. The daily commute to the city just ended up being around 30 to 40 minutes each way, with a couple of train transfers and, fare costs piling up. It did add some extra effort to our itinerary. The deal initially looked attractive because we booked through Klook, which is why we didn't really realize how much of a hassle the transportation would be until we actually got there. But speaking of transportation, I gotta give credit where credit is due. I was genuinely impressed by Tokyo's train system. We mainly used the subway to get around, and I absolutely loved how interconnected everything was. The trains came so frequently, we never really had to stress about timing, and just using one card, a Suica card that is, across multiple lines was super convenient. It was also really easy to recharge. We did pick up a 24 and 48 hour pass just to save on some fare costs, but overall it really highlighted how easy it is to actually live without a car there. The stations themselves were also incredibly clean and well maintained. None of that sketchy, smelly, or depressing vibe that you get from some of the stations here back in Toronto. And some of them even had shops in them, cafes, little gift stores, and the stations, which I thought was, really, really cool. I also did ride the bullet train because we had actually spent a couple of nights in Kyoto, which, I'll talk more about later on, but that was also a very, very cool experience. Just being able to travel from, one city at such a rapid pace to another, and also feeling very comfortable at the same time was a very, very nice experience. We could definitely use something like that over here in Southern Ontario. If we had something like that from, I don't know, like Windsor and going all the way to Montreal, just think about how beneficial something like that would be here. And, while we're on the topic of the subway, something I really, really came to admire was just the level of etiquette and the calmness that everyone practiced there and the respect. It was remarkably quiet and not forced or like in an awkward way, but in a respectful way. Given how demanding work life is there, a lot of people probably catch their, moments of rest or only moments of rest on their commutes. And, everyone seems to really honor that unspoken rule. I also noticed how quickly people were to offer seats to the elderly or someone who actually looked like they needed it more. It just felt very considerate. Honestly, it really speaks to the broader culture in Japan. People were incredibly polite and welcoming there, and while most did keep to themselves, there was like a level of mutual respect I really appreciated. And as someone who's pretty reserved myself, it actually made me surprisingly very comfortable and at ease there. It's funny because people talk about, I don't know, Canadians being polite and nice, but the Japanese really take that to the next level. A lot of places that we attended, the service was top-notch. Staff members and employees were all very polite and helpful. And it's interesting because, over there, they don't even accept tips, even when we wanted to give them something. But over here in North America, you'll find places with, not service that's not nearly as good or just very, I don't know, poor. And you're greeted with like a 15% tip option on the point of sales machine. One of the first spots that we checked out was the Tsukiji Fish Market, and it was such a cool way to start off the trip. The atmosphere there was bustling, rows of fresh seafood, vendors calling out, and the smell of grilled seafood was up in the air. And I ended up trying out some sweet potato chips there, some takoyaki, and got to enjoy some nice cold matcha. Afterwards, we wandered around for a bit and eventually made our way to Ginza's main street, which is called Chuo Dori. And I noticed that while walking around there, just how clean and well maintained the streets are in Japan, along with how incredibly safe I felt. Never did I feel like, I was in a spot where I was uncomfortable or where I was unsafe, and I was very, very much appreciative of that. And sure, maybe I might be a little bit biased because I'm on vacation and I'm looking at everything through rose-tinted glasses, but I generally felt like I was at peace there, and just walking through those streets, it felt therapeutic in a way. The nice thing about going to Chuo Dori on a Sunday is that they had the main road closed off, so vehicle traffic wasn't present, so that the pedestrians had a lot of room to walk around and explore in. That was actually pretty cool. There were tons of people walking around there, and a lot of the stores that they had there were pretty high-end stuff, so majority of the time we spent there was just kind of window shopping. We did some exploring around Roppongi after that, and I thought it was a very nice upscale area. I'm kind of envious for those that reside in those residential areas. It was all very clean and well structured. We did see some historical landmarks on the way, as well as stop by Tokyo Tower for a little while. And finally, we made our way to Tokyo City's Roppongi Hills and caught some really nice shots of Tokyo City. Being up so high really lets you take in the beauty of the city and its views. The next day, we started off at Yoyogi Park, which was a great change of pace from the city. Wide open spaces, trees everywhere, and a really peaceful vibe. Just next to it is the Meiji Shrine, which, felt incredibly serene and spiritual, especially walking through the massive torii gates, which were surrounded by forests. Afterwards, we dove right into the chaos of Takeshita Street in Harajuku. It was packed, colorful, and full of quirky fashion, snacks, and energy. It was a wild contrast, but honestly, the back-to-back experiences really captured that duality of Tokyo, calm and tradition, right next to the hyper-modern youth culture. Then on April 8th, we got up extra early, rented a car, and made our way towards Mount Fuji. On the way there, we saw some really nice views of smaller towns and some very nice landscape, and the drive was also very serene and peaceful. We didn't really run into a lot of traffic, and being from an area where we have to drive on the 401 in Ontario, it was a nice change of scenery. Our first stop was in Oshino, a small traditional village which has thatched roofed houses and crystal clear spring water ponds fed by the mountain itself. The view of Mount Fuji was also just unreal, like something straight out of a postcard. It felt incredibly calm, and the slower pace of the village was a refreshing contrast to the constant motion that you experience in Tokyo. After Oshino, we drove into the town of Fuji and hiked up to the Chuo Pagoda, one of the most iconic views you can get of Mount Fuji. The climb was no joke with that steep incline. It was quite a lot of work, but it made the view from the observation deck all the more rewarding. Seeing the red pagoda framed against Fuji and the city below was honestly absolutely breathtaking. Easily one of the most memorable moments of my trip. After soaking in the views, we made one last stop to the famous Lawson convenience store spot, you know, the one with the perfect view of Mount Fuji in the background. We grabbed some snacks, took a few more shots, and then made our way to Azagawa and just chilled by Lake Kawaguchi. It was the perfect way to end our Fuji day trip, scenic, quiet, and filled with those small details that really stick with you. The next day, we still had our rental, so we decided to take advantage of it and check out Megaton Q. And honestly, this place was wild. It was like sensory overload in the best way possible. We went on a bit of a shopping spree here. They had everything from groceries, cosmetics, clothes, toys, random gadgets, you name it, they've got it. If I had to compare it to something in the West, it's kind of like Walmart, but cranked up to 11. After that chaotic energy, we shifted gears and headed over to Shinjuku Gyoen, a park famous for its cherry blossoms, and since we were visiting in early April, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Sakura trees were in full bloom effect, and the entire park was just blanketed in those soft pink petals. The atmosphere was just so peaceful. You know, you had families picnicking there, laughing, doing activities, and just people hanging out and having a great time together. It felt like one of those rare moments where, you know, everything just kind of slows down and you get to soak it all in. Later that evening, we made our way down to Shibuya, and of course, we had to check out the iconic Shibuya crossing. Man, it was packed with people. It was just like a constant stream of movement in every direction, and somehow it all worked in perfect rhythm, which is kind of weird. We also got to see some awesome modded cars cruising through the area, which was a nice surprise. And then to end off the night, we ended up at the Shibuya Sky. And man, seeing the city lit up from that high was something else. Tokyo at night just has this electric energy, and the views from up there really let you appreciate just how massive and alive the city is. The next day, we saddled up early again and caught the bullet train to Kyoto. Right away, the vibe was completely different from Tokyo. Kyoto felt a lot more laid back and relaxed. It makes sense, it's often referred to as the cultural heart of Japan. And from what I understand, they have a strict zoning law in place to preserve that traditional atmosphere, and you can really feel it as it's very pedestrian and biking friendly. One of the first spots that we visited was the Kyoto Imperial Palace, and immediately I was struck by the architecture. The design felt grand yet minimalist, and it respected history without really trying too hard to impress. But it did also remind me a bit of Demon Slayer, which had the inner anime nerd pretty hyped. Just being there gave me some deeper appreciation for how much effort Japan puts into preserving its cultural roots. After the Imperial Palace, we made our way through the Ninenzaka Street and then the Sanenzaka Path, two beautifully preserved historic lanes that really immerse you in the old world Japan. As we gradually worked our way towards Gojo Dori, and we came across all kinds of amazing spots, traditional spots, stores, cafes, kimono rental studios, and even tea ceremony houses. The whole area had this timeless charm that, really showcased some of the best that Japan's cultural heritage has to offer. It really felt like less sightseeing and more like actually stepping into a different era. The following day, we made the trip over to Osaka to check out Universal Studios, and this was easily one of the most fun parts of the trip. The energy here was also electric and pretty wild. There were tons of cool attractions, especially if you're a Nintendo, Harry Potter, or a fan of classic movies. We had a blast exploring through the different themes areas and just soaking in the atmosphere. It really brought out the inner kid in me. We unfortunately couldn't do the Mario World because it was sold out, but from what I had heard from the other tourists in the area, it was extremely packed anyways, so it is what it is, maybe next time. On our way back, we made a brief stop at the Arashima Bamboo Forest, and it was a short visit, but I'm really glad we did make time for it. Walking through those towering bamboo stalks, it felt otherworldly. It was really peaceful and quiet, and it had this sort of spiritual stillness to it that's kind of hard to describe. It's one of those places where you just gotta check it out for yourself. We wrapped up the trip by heading back to Tokyo for our final couple of days, and of course, I had to, check out Akihabara, and that was the day I checked out all the PC hardware stuff, but, I did also check out a whole bunch of other shops there too, a lot of anime merch if you're into that stuff, and, a lot of gaming stuff was there. If you like collecting cards, they had card shops there, just a whole bunch of cool stuff there to check out. Arcades, retro game shops. If you're a nerd, it's like heaven there. But the real highlight for our final night was visiting TeamLab Planets, an immersive and interactive art museum that was honestly unlike anything I had experienced. From walking barefoot through the water-lit halls to the infinite mirror and room lights, it was a perfect way to end off the trip with a surreal and unforgettable bang. So yeah, that was my Japan trip, and honestly, there's so much more I could talk about, but this video has already kind of gone on longer than I had originally planned. But Japan is just absolutely surreal, you guys. Every day, it felt like a new adventure, and whether it was the food, the culture, the iconic landmarks, the attractions, I genuinely loved every part of it, and I'm already thinking about going back. Maybe it might be a destination that I go to annually. We'll see. If you've ever thought about visiting, I just can't recommend it enough though. But thanks for sticking around and letting me share this experience with you guys. I'm hoping you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed living in it. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.